What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor Sikkema, Dalton Wasserman here with you guys for another divisional preview as we, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, get closer to the 2025 NFL regular season. Today, we are talking about the NFC West. This is an extremely competitive division every single year, and it feels like 2025 is shaping up to be another chapter in that book. Dalton, how are we feeling today, my friend?
Good. We got a wild division. Certainly got to get our popcorn ready to watch this one. You know what, I Trevor, let me ask you something. I'm going to get off topic here for a second.
Okay, all right. I'm a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie.
Something's been bothering me for like probably a week or so. So I discovered something that kind of bothered me. Tell me if it bothers you the same way. And there's that phrase, "Get your popcorn ready," right? Which implies that you get off your couch and you get a bag of popcorn and throw it in the microwave and you get it ready, right? Apparently, I discovered recently that, you know, when you do any of these food delivery apps, any Uber Eats or DoorDash or any of that, you know, you can apparently order from the movie theater while sitting at your house. You can order a bag of popcorn to have delivered to you from a movie theater.
So
this bothers me. That feels like heinous behavior to me. That's like I get wanting food delivered, but that feels like it's too far now. I'm not like that. I don't like that.
My wife is a big popcorn fanatic, specifically movie theater popcorn. Right? Sometimes you go to the store and you buy these popcorn bags and it says that it's movie theater quality. It's never the same. It's never the same that it's like when you go to the movie theater. And she has said multiple times, and in fact, there is a movie theater that is close to where we live. She said to me the other week, actually, I think she just said a couple of days ago, you know, that movie theater, you could just walk in, buy popcorn, because the popcorn machine is before you show your tickets to get in, and we could just go in, buy the movie theater popcorn, and then leave. And
okay, I respect that. If you're gonna
that's different for you.
If you're gonna leave your house and go get it, you earned it. You worked for it.
Okay.
I respect that. If she was gonna sit there and go on like DoorDash or something and order a bag of popcorn from down the street to have it brought to her, that's a line for me. I just feel like, look, there's getting takeout, there's getting whatever food that you want, like from whatever place you want. But if you're ordering a bag of popcorn to be delivered to you, especially when you can buy a whole box of like 6 bags you can throw in the microwave for probably half the price.
But it's not the same. We just established it's not the same.
See, the fact, I don't mind that. If you're going to go out and get it and you're going to put in the effort to go get it because it's not the same, I don't hate that. But for popcorn, if you need popcorn brought to you, I have an issue with that. I think that's just heinous behavior. I don't know why that bothers me. It just does.
I'm glad to know that you're still on her good side, saying that is acceptable if we were to go get the popcorn. But I would also let you know, I am the DoorDash in this story if this were to happen in our relationship. Like, it's not, I'm going to order it for DoorDash. It's, hey, you want to go down the street and get me some popcorn.
Now, I don't know if you'd say exactly like that. That just comes with the territory. That I can't help you with. I have no complaints about that. That's you chose this life. That comes with the territory, for sure.
I don't need help with it, baby. We signed up for it. Okay, all right, let's get into this. Let's figure out which teams we actually need to get our popcorn ready for. And, of course, when we say popcorn, we don't mean the DoorDash kind. We mean the you actually got to go get it kind because, Dalton, no freeloaders on this podcast. You got to put in some work to deserve that movie theater popcorn. So let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. And I think this is a hot-button team that we could start out with here because – Matthew Stafford's injury, I'm still worried about it, man. I really am. I know that he got back to practice. There were some funny jokes around the internet, people saying that it was a Matthew Stafford imposter. We never actually saw him without his helmet on. Was it an AI, simulation? Was that the practice footage that we were given? No, I do think that it was actually Matthew Stafford. But I get a little bit worried about the back injury here. Let's look at what the Rams were able to do last season. 10-7 overall. First in the NFC West, they lost in that divisional round. And I think I said this earlier on this very show. The Rams were a team where if we don't get that crazy snow game at Philadelphia, I legitimately think they could have beaten the Eagles that weekend. If all things were equal, say like if we were playing in a dome. Now, Eagles fans might come at me for that. But hey, you know what? You got the advantage of playing in Philadelphia. You're playing at home. That's why you had the better record. I understand it. It worked out for you. Their offensive grade last year was 9th in the NFL, 79.9. Again, Stafford, a big reason why, but not just him. We'll get to that in a second. Their EPA per play was actually 13th. Their defensive grade was 15th at a 69.7, but it was a really young unit. Those guys are getting a little bit older. I think they could be even better this upcoming season. Our projected win total that we have for the Los Angeles Rams is 9.5. Dalton, what do you think about that? 9.5, obviously that's a number expecting Matthew Stafford to be the starting quarterback of this team. How worried are you about Stafford? And then just talk to me about your thoughts about the rest of this Rams team.
A good level of worried. It's good to see him practicing this week again. But look, I think the biggest concern for me with this team anyway was Stafford's lack of mobility, even healthy. The struggles they had last year in pass protection and his performance under pressure, where he was one of the worst passers in football under pressure last year. It's extremely concerning. I think their entire season hinges on two guys. One is Matthew Stafford, and two, in front of him is left tackle Alaric Jackson, right? He's got the blood clot issue. We don't really know when he's going to be on the field. And last year, there was nothing you could point to more that correlated to wins and losses for this team than pass protection, right? I mean, that's just where it was at. They had 8 games, I believe. No, sorry, 11 games where they had less than a 62.5 pass blocking grade. They went 4-7 in those games. Okay, so I think when you're talking about if they hit above that mark, they were basically unbeatable because Stafford was protected. And when he's protected, he can still make every throw on the field. But yeah. I think those are the two X-factor guys for me. It's Stafford and it's Jackson, and it goes hand in hand because, again, this team last year in total was the third worst pass-blocking team in the league for us with our pass-blocking grading. When they did pass protect, they won ball games. It was that simple because Stafford was able to stand in the pocket and make throws. He's obviously 36, 37 years old now. He can't move like he used to. He's not going to improvise outside the pocket anymore. He's just hit that age where he can't do that. Now, if he's got a back injury and he's even less mobile than maybe the slightly mobile he was last year, and there's no improv that can come out of him at all, I just worry about where this offense goes, even as loaded as they are on the outside. The pass protection and now Stafford's health, that's really going to determine their whole season.
Yeah, and for the strengths on this team, I do agree with you. I think that health is just the main thing with the Rams. I think if they're fully healthy, they're absolutely still one of the players in the NFC to potentially make the NFC Championship game. And, of course, who knows after that to make the Super Bowl. But health is a big question mark here. You say that their biggest passing strength, or their biggest strength on this team is their pass catchers. Everybody can go see these articles over at pff.com, which you penned, obviously. And I think that the pass catchers certainly are going to be what they lean on no matter what. I think if it's Stafford, it looks a little bit better. But, of course, Puka Nacua, highest graded wide receiver that we had in football last year. I mean, he was unbelievable. He's been so good over the last 2 years of his career. Now they're adding Devontae Adams. They have Tutu Atwell as well. They're adding Terrence Ferguson into the mix of the tight end spot, who very clearly they have a lot of high hopes for, drafting him in the top 50. So the pass catchers of this team, I agree with you, massive strength. And maybe Jimmy Garoppolo can make some noise if he ends up having to start a handful of these games here for Matthew Stafford. We saw the mailman, Stetson Bennett, the guy who just cannot go away. We saw what he was able to do in the preseason as well. But how much faith do you have that this pass-catching unit can still carry the Rams offense? I don't want to say make it quarterback-proof because I certainly don't think it's that level. I don't think you think it's that level either. But what level of faith do you have with this being the strength of the team?
I mean, very, very high. I mean, when you look at, again, you mentioned the highest graded receiver in football in Puka Nacua. Devontae Adams still has plenty left in the tank, and he showed that last year, especially when he got to the Jets. He's still very, very capable of beating man-to-man coverage. That was one thing that was a bit of a weakness for Cooper Kupp and the rest of the receivers. Adams can still win one-on-one. I think that's a huge asset for him. You look at Tutu Atwell, you look at Jordan Whittington. You got a really good group of tight ends, I think, with a fully healthy Tyler Higbee, Colby Parkinson, second-round pick Terrence Ferguson. Obviously, even Kyron Williams can catch some balls out of the backfield. They've got a deep stable of pass catchers that, again, when the quarterback, whether it's Stafford or Garoppolo, is protected, give them a real shot to win games every single week. We saw it last year, what Nacua can do, and it feels weird to me still that he's only going into his third year in the NFL because it feels like we've been talking about him forever. But I think this group of wide receivers that very quietly was the highest-graded group in the NFL last year, this is a group that can carry their offense. They just need the pass protection and to be able to keep the quarterback upright.
Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball because it was a lot of young guys last year, but specifically Jared Verse, I think, is their rising star. And he might not even be a rising star. He might just already be a star. When you and I did the PFF 50, the top 50 players going into this upcoming season, Jared Verse was a player that we felt like we needed to get in there. And we felt like that was sort of going to be different from a lot of the other top 50 lists that might be coming out. But we got the data. I mean, the data shows the way that this guy won as a pass rusher. You know, how many total pressures that he generated. He only had, what was it, 4.5, 5.5 sacks, something like that. He only had that little sacks, but it was because of so many missed tackles in the backfield. If he finished even half of the missed tackles that it felt like he had in the backfield, this would have been a double-digit sacker. We would have been talking about this guy at a much higher level, and I feel like he would have been given a little bit more of the respect that he deserves. To me, Jared Verse is the guy on this defense that you have to be afraid of. And if he's really taking that next step this year, along with a lot of those other young guys, the defense is going to be better than, I believe it was 23rd, I said last year in defensive grade. That's going to be more close to around the middle of the league, maybe even top half of the league. And again, if Matthew Stafford is healthy, we're talking about a really, really good football team here. But on the defensive side of the ball, I really do think that it starts with Jared Verse.
No, it absolutely does. He's their best player. He established that last year. I mean, you're talking about a guy, top 10 pass rush grade, top 10 pass rush win rate. The only other edge defender in football who had an 80-plus grade in run defense and in the pass rush was T.J. Watt. 89 pressures were the second most we've ever recorded by a rookie edge defender, only behind Nick Bosa in 2019. He didn't just have a good rookie year. He had a historic rookie year. He's already one of probably the top 10 edge defenders in football. And the fact that he's that good in run defense as well is just incredible considering how young he is. And you mentioned it. He was a top 10 edge defender last year, and he led the league in missed tackles. The second he fixes that part, there's no ceiling on him. There really isn't, considering what he showed us. He's going to be one of the elite players in the league for a long time.
I think a couple of the other players that really stepped up for them, obviously Braden Fisk, sort of his running mate along the defensive line. Another rookie last year who I think is going to be even better this year. Byron Young, I feel like, has been getting better over the last couple of years as well. They've got Kobe Turner. Now they're bringing in Poona Ford, who has been an underrated player, I think, for the last couple of years. Really starting to get the recognition that he deserves, and I think that's why he got the payday day that he did this free agency period. But I think Cam Curl and Cam Kinchins are a really good safety duo back there. Very clearly, they had a lot of really great chemistry. And then when you look at the linebacker level, I love that them drafting Chris Paul Jr. I think that he's going to fit perfectly with this team. And then finding an undrafted free agent gem in Omar Spates last year, who was fantastic for them. And to say that you got an undrafted free agent who made the roster is one thing. Then for that player to not only make the roster, but start for you, and then not only start for you, but play well for you, very impressive. And I think that really helped elevate a really young defense. And so it's a lot of those names still that are there for this team, but now they're all a year older. They're still in that defensive system. And I don't know if there's any one of those other names outside of Verse that you're really intrigued by. I know they got Josiah Stewart as well in the edge, who you pointed out in your article as somebody to watch for as a rookie. But man, I love the names that they have on this defense. I really like the outlook for this team, and I think the year two can be even better for a lot of these guys.
For sure. I think Ford's a good call out because they signed him basically so they had a better shot of beating the Eagles, right? Because the Eagles in the two games they played him last year, Saquon Barkley ran all over him. You have to be able to stop the run against a lot of these teams in the NFC, right? You think about Philadelphia, Washington, Detroit, Minnesota, Atlanta, even Green Bay. All of these teams want to run the football. Arizona in their own division, right? All these teams want to run the football, and they felt like we need somebody who's that big run stopper in the middle next to Kobe Turner. I think Poona Ford's a really good call out there. And then you mentioned Josiah Stewart. I thought an underrated need for this team going into the draft was depth behind Jared Verse, right? You've got Verse, you've got Byron Young as the starters, but they really kind of thinned out in free agency when it came to depth at edge defender. Josiah Stewart, I think, is a perfect fit as a situational pass rusher for him. Third in college football in pass rush grade last year, second in pass rush win rate, almost 28%. This guy, he's undersized, but whether he was at Coastal Carolina or at Michigan, he's always gotten the job done. He's super aggressive to make up for that size. I think Stewart's going to be a really nice addition when you talk about that designated pass rusher role. He's going to have an early role with this team.
All right, just like we've done for every episode so far in our divisional preview series, Ben Lindsay has some season-long bets for us to take a look at for all of these teams. Ben's looking at the Rams to miss the playoffs at plus 130, which you can find over at DraftKings. And his reason for that, Rams offensive line ranked 30th in PFF pass blocking grade as a unit in 2024, and have questions about when starting left tackle Alaric Jackson will be able to return due to blood clots, as you mentioned earlier in the show. That, coupled with the concerning reports about Stafford's back injury, is enough to raise concerns for me about their offense to be competitive in that NFC West, which we said is a very competitive division every single year. And so our projections given that I think that we're projecting Alaric Jackson and Matthew Stafford to be healthy, had them at 9.5 wins. But you can understand how tight that division's going to be. If they can't get to that double-digit win mark, you can get plus money for them to miss the playoffs. I can certainly understand that. What do you think about that bet being plus money there? Sort of what Ben's talking about here for the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, when you make these bets, you paint the picture, right? And that's exactly the picture you're talking about. Is they can't pass protect, and if you can't pass protect for Jimmy Garoppolo either, then you're probably going to sink also because he's not moving anywhere from the top of his drop either. So I think there is definitely a picture to paint there. If things do go wrong and the pass protection isn't good and Stafford isn't healthy, I think this is very realistic. I think if everything goes right for this team and Alaric Jackson is good by, say, midseason and Matthew Stafford plays all 17 games and this was all much ado about nothing, then I think they're the favorites to win this division. But there's definitely a road here, especially with the value at plus money. It makes a lot of sense. If you're worried about Matthew Stafford, this is something you can keep in your back pocket to hedge that and go, okay, this is a competitive division. I think the other three teams obviously are very talented. I think Arizona especially is looking to make another step. And then talk about the rest of the NFC. There's a lot of teams that got better. So I think there's now a much wider variance for the Rams of what we think could happen, as opposed to if you felt good about Stafford at 100%, I think they're pretty solidly the favorites to win this division.
Yeah, and I think that looking at them fully healthy as the favorites to win the division, I don't have pushback on that. But just given the injury concerns, the fact that this team firing on all cylinders, it felt like during the second half of the season, they could have played better out of the gate. And I understand that they were playing with a lot of young guys, but they won 10 games last year. And like I said, they were firing on all cylinders as we were getting into the playoffs and playing well there. So you can realistically think, all right, maybe one or two less wins that they have this year if those star players, Alaric Jackson and Matthew Stafford, are going to be missing time, or if they're not 100% as the year goes on. And so I do think that that's a good bet, especially getting it at plus money. Obviously, we hope that all of these guys are fully healthy. But when you were talking about Matthew Stafford, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but you had written this in your article, and I think it's a really good point. He had the most turnover-worthy plays when pressured last season. So, like, even if Stafford is out there and he is healthy, if you don't have Alaric Jackson, if that offensive line is not going to be better overall, like, that was already an issue with him. And you mentioned, okay, Jimmy Garoppolo is that next guy, and then Stetson Bennett is QB3 on this team. There's just too many question marks, in my opinion. Too many question marks for them going into the season. I'd love for them to be fully healthy because this Rams team is a lot of fun when they are. But I'm nervous. I'm nervous about this Rams team. And if you like that bet, heck, even if you didn't, and you want to check out more info, more data on a lot of the bets that you can make for the season, as well as like player props that you could see week in and week out, go get a PFF Plus subscription. You guys can see all the data that's right there. You can use our player prop tool that we have on the PFF app, so you can see that every single week, and you can see which lines we think have the biggest edge compared to our data and our simulations and what we think are going to happen. So you can check all that stuff out if you have a PFF Plus subscription, again, over at PFF.com, as well as in the PFF app. The app is the best way to be able to use that player prop tool if that's how you really like to get some skin in the game when you're watching these games this upcoming season. Let's go to the Arizona Cardinals next, because this is a team that I think is certainly worth a good conversation here. They finished last year 8-9. That was third in the NFC West. We have their projected win total this year at 8.7, so just under 9. So pretty competitive there, I think, with a lot of these other teams that we will hear in this division. Last year, their offensive grade of an 81.0 was tied for 7th in the NFL. Their defense, 64.8, that was 23rd. You know, when I look at this Cardinals team, I think there's a lot of talent here, especially when you look at sort of what they did in free agency as well. Bringing in a guy like Josh Sweat, I think, can really help along the defensive line. Marvin Harrison Jr. taking that next step, I think, is going to be absolutely huge for them. They brought in a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson to give them more beef in the middle. Calais Campbell's the same way. They brought back Bam Browning. They have Darius Robinson, who you hope takes that next step along the defensive line as well. And so I like the talent that they have on this team. But Dalton, for me to this point, and this has sort of been the Kyler Murray era for the Cardinals, they can compete with anybody. But then the peaks and the valleys, the gap is the wavelength is way too big, in my opinion. There's too many times where I go, man, the Cardinals just competed with one of the best teams in the NFL, or even got a win against one of the best teams in the NFL. And then the next week, or even 2 weeks later, whatever it is, they're playing with their food, as the saying goes, right? They're playing with teams that they should be much better than, or that they would have been much better than if they were the same version of the team that they were 2 weeks prior when they were playing one of the better teams in the NFL. I just think that variance is far too high and low right now for the Cardinals. And if you want me to be honest, that's what I'm looking to see from this team. Because what was it going into week 8 or was it going into week 10? I think it was going into week 10. This team was number 1 in the division. Like, they were feeling themselves. They were thinking playoffs. And then all of a sudden it sputters to the point where down the stretch they finished 3rd in the division. Now 8-9 is not a terrible record, but it just goes to show the team was too hot and cold. There was not that consistency. And so we can talk about the roster, we can talk about the players, but at the end of the day, for me, with the Cardinals, it's about the consistency. And if this team plays consistent, if they raise their floor, I legitimately feel like they are playing for a division title this year and a playoff spot. What do you think about the Arizona Cardinals and really just the Kyler Murray era to this point?
Yeah, with Kyler and with the whole team, it does come down to consistency. And you even mentioned, they were 23rd in PFF grade on defense. Well, that was an improvement at least from being dead last the year before. So we did see moments where their defense was better, and they've continued to build the depth, I think, especially on the D-line and at cornerback this offseason. So I do like the direction that their defense is going, kind of incrementally improving. But you're right, this is about being hot and cold, being a little bit streaky, and I think it goes right along with Kyler Murray. I don't know that there is a more maybe make or break quarterback both for his team and his career this season in the league than Kyler Murray. I think there's a lot of pressure on him to get this team, to find a way to get this team back to the playoffs, right? To find a way to be more consistent on a week to week. And honestly, you watch some of these Cardinal games, it feels like quarter to quarter, or it feels like just a couple of drive to drive, you're not sure which Kyler Murray, which offense that you're getting. The constants are James Conner and Trey McBride right now. I think Marvin Harrison's going to continue to get better, but it just feels like this team, there's not very many football games last year where from front to back for 60 minutes that they played the same caliber of football, right? You just always felt like there was moments, and then for 2 or 3 drives it stalled, and then there were games, I can think about against the Rams and the Seahawks where they were very low scoring and they were losing like 13-9. You just can't have, like you mentioned, that level of peaks and valleys. And I think Kyler Murray really embodies that. When he's great, it's awesome. I think there were 6 games last year where he had at least a 70 passing grade. They won 5 out of those 6 games. The problem is in the rest of them, they went 3-8 because they just don't have a ton of depth on this team. So they really need the stars, including Murray, to play well. And when they don't, there's not a ton of other answers. I know they're trying to build that more and more this offseason, but you're absolutely right. Week to week, it can be hard to tell which Arizona Cardinals team that you're getting.
Yeah, I'm looking at their schedule from last year, and I think that win at the beginning of the year against the Rams, we sort of counted that as a signature win for them, but they really didn't have one after that. I think that the Chargers win was a good win, but it was still just a 2-point win in a low-scoring game. They ended up winning that game 17-15, but other than that, the best wins that they have on their schedule, yeah, sure, at San Francisco was a good win in week 5, but we remember, that San Francisco game, that's the game that we talk about with the Niners, and we'll talk about the Niners here in a second. That, to me, was the realization game that the Niners just weren't going to be a good run defense team. That was the game that James Conner absolutely went off in the 3rd and 4th quarters, and they just kept handing him the ball simply because the Niners could not stop them on defense when they were just handing the ball off. They end up winning that game by 1, and I don't want to take anything away from them there. A road game, especially a division game, that's a big one. But you go throughout the season, the rest of their wins were that Chargers game that you win by 2, the Dolphins, who weren't good last year, the Bears, who weren't good last year, the Jets, who weren't good last year, the Patriots, who weren't good last year, and then they end the season against the Niners, and obviously the Niners, just like I said, were not a good team. The rest of their losses, they lost to Buffalo, they lost to Detroit, they lost to the Commanders, they lost to the Packers, they lost to the Seahawks twice, they lost to Minnesota. Most of the losses they had were to the best teams they played last year, and to me, that just goes into, I just feel like they were not playing in rhythm well enough. They're too high variance of a team. They're talented enough to compete with those better teams, but they just didn't have enough consistency, even in a game by game or even in a quarter by quarter basis, to finish those games the way that they needed to. Let's look at the biggest strengths that you have on this team there that you had listed for this team, and it is that rushing attack. They leaned on that quite a bit. They've got that dual threat ability with what Kyler can do with his legs. Then you got guys like James Conner. You get Trey Benson as well coming up too. So you feel like they're going to continue to run the ball this year, and that's going to be their strength?
Yeah, that's the constant in this offense. Jonathan Gannon on both sides of the ball is trying to be the more physical team on the field, right? And I think even all those games you just mentioned, look at the games that you listed, most of them that they lost, right? When you talk about even Detroit, Buffalo's better in run defense than they are in coverage. There's a lot of those teams. Seattle's a solid run defense that's getting better, especially on the inside. And then you look at the teams they beat, the Bears, the Jets, you mentioned the 49ers, teams that can't stop the run, and the more they can lean on this run game in Arizona, those are the games they're actually winning, right? You avoid the high variance Kyler Murray passing game. You get down, you run the football. James Conner had the 6th best rushing grade in football last year. Kyler Murray's obviously a dynamic option threat, over 7 yards a carry last year. Trey Benson, Amari DiMercato, multiple tight ends on the field. They'll get in 12 or even 13 personnel and then ride the play action off of that after they get this run game going. But to me, when I watch this team, that's the biggest constant, more than Kyler Murray, more than what they're trying to do on defense and getting better each week. I think they want to get in and run the football. They want to get powerful. They want to use multiple tight ends. They want to get downhill in these duo schemes. They want to be the more physical team, and I think that's the one thing that does show up every week.
To list off a stat that you had here that I really liked in the article, since the start of 2023, James Conner's 92.2 rushing grade and 128 missed tackles forced ranked both second in the NFL behind only Derrick Henry. I think that James Conner does not often get the respect that he deserves. I think that Trey Benson is a fantastic RB2 for this team. And I do think that rushing attack is going to be something that they lean on again this year, because that's where the horses are for this team. Biggest weakness you have as linebacker for this unit. So when we look at this off-ball linebacker unit for this team, it's Mack Wilson, it's Akeem Davis-Gaither, it's Owen Pappo, Cody Simon, a guy who they drafted this year, who they could hope and get in the mix there. It feels as though when we talk about the front seven of this team, I think a lot of people talk about them and they're very excited, right? I mentioned some of the guys on the defensive line, some of the edge rushers that they have, Josh Sweat, B.J. Ojulari. They have Xavier Thomas as well, Zaven Collins, Jordan Birch, Baron Browning. Like, there's a lot of guys within their front seven that you feel pretty good about. But then that off-ball linebacker unit is a little more skeptical. So clearly you're worried about that as a potential Achilles heel for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look Mack Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Michael Walker, Cody Simon, a 4th-round rookie. There's obviously not a star in this group. They were 28th in PFF grade last year at linebacker. It's the one part of their defense where, look, I just don't think they got significantly better this offseason, right? They got a ton of defensive linemen. They drafted Walter Nolan in the 1st round. And look, I like Walter Nolan. He's really talented. We haven't seen him in the preseason yet because of a calf injury, and I know we heard that last year with their 1st-round pick Darius Robinson. But I think this is the one spot where I go, I just can't. You can't project this to be a highly graded unit. It's not going to be great. I don't think even a lot of these guys have played very well in the preseason. I think this is a team, if there's any available veteran linebackers that come available via trade, I think they're going to be in on it. I really do, because the secondary got better this offseason. I love Will Johnson, and he's going to start on the outside, their 2nd-round pick. I really like the depth of this defensive line, but this second level feels like, to me, the biggest hole on their team right now. I'm really worried about it.
How do you feel about this secondary? I feel like the opinions of the Arizona Cardinals secondary is different from who you ask. And I think a lot of it weighs in on Will Johnson, right? I mean, if Will Johnson can be the CB1 that they believe that his talent level can be, then I think it makes everything look a little bit better. I like Max Melton. I like Garrett Williams. I like Budda Baker, obviously. Jalen Thompson is good. I'm a big Adrian Taylor Demerson fan, so him getting in the mix of safety, I think is going to be impactful for them. But Will Johnson struggled in week 2. He did not have the best of PFF coverage grade. I believe it was in the 30s, but that was also, there was some miscommunication there, I think, on one of those routes that he ended up giving up a big catch. And he kind of very clearly, like, he thought he was supposed to be in one spot. He thought the safety was going to cover the deep in route. And it ended up being that he probably should have covered it there. So that was a little bit more of just a chemistry and a communication thing. But ultimately, how do you feel about this secondary? Because I think really a lot of people's opinions on this team, the defense will go as this secondary goes. So how much faith do you have in this group?
I like it. The way they run it, it's a defense that's designed to just not give up explosive plays, right? It's a lot of quarters and a lot of sitting back and making tackles, right? I think Will Johnson will be able to make the adjustment. I think the big thing is that they're just very young at corner, right? We saw Starling Thomas with the season-ending injury. I mean, you're going to be relying on Will Johnson, Max Melton, maybe even Elijah Jones, who they drafted last year as well. Outside corner is going to be a question, but I think on the inside, they're rock solid. This is quietly one of the better safety groups with the three guys you mentioned in Baker and Thompson and Taylor Demerson. And then Garrett Williams became one of the best slot corners in football last year. So on the inside, again, it's kind of weird because you've got this weakness at linebacker, but you're really good at safety and in the slot. But one of the developments for this defense is going to be, how did all these young outside corners develop throughout the season, right? Who are the guys that are going to emerge as their starters? Because they're very young outside at corner. I think they're really talented, and I think it's a defense that does protect those guys to an extent, but it's going to take some time. But to me, I'm optimistic on Will Johnson. Again, he was a top 15 to 20 talent in the draft, and he dropped because of medicals. I think he's going to be a good player, and I really like that he's getting to start week one right away because he should have been a first-round pick. And again, just the medicals were the only thing. The knee injury was the only thing that held that out.
I think Cardinals fans might be yelling at us and like, how are you this far into a preview for our team and you haven't even talked about the receiving core? And I think the receiving core is a good one, and we'll talk about that here. It's a good way to usher in our season-long bet that Ben has for this team. But Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, Trey McBride, I like this pass-catching group, especially if Marvin Harrison Jr. is really taking that next step into being the wide receiver one for this team. I think that looks really good. And Ben's season-long bet that he has for the Cardinals, Trey McBride, most receiving touchdowns in the NFC West. Now, I think that that's kind of funny, right? Given we talked so much about him not getting into the end zone last year, but obviously this is a heavy volume, heavy target type of player. And I think that it was really just bad luck, a fluke, the fact that he had that no touchdown streak for so long last season. But for McBride to have the most receiving touchdowns in the NFC West, that is plus 1,200. So there's a really good numbers there over at DraftKings if you feel good about a bounce back year from touchdowns. Ben says McBride only had two receiving touchdowns in 2024, but he led the division in red zone targets with 21 and ranked among the top 10 in players in the entire NFL in red zone target rate. We should be expecting some positive TD regression or progression, really, in 2025, and 12-1 to lead the division is enticing odds given how talented McBride is, and then certainly his volume that goes along with that. So what do you think about that? I'm not gonna lie, plus 1,200 for McBride given how often they target him in the red zone. That's a pretty juicy number, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. He's one of the best tight ends in football, and it was a record last year, I think. Wasn't it the most receptions to start a season without a touchdown before he got one? I think it was week 16 or 17.
It was either the record or we were so close to it that we were talking about it all the time.
I think
it was one of those two.
I think he at least tied it, and it felt like for a bit there was a few weeks there when even with a lot of those red zone targets, like almost like he was cursed, like he was just never going to score another touchdown in his life. But all of a sudden, I think sometimes with these bets you have to look at the rest of the division, right? And I think you look at the Niners and just the mountain of injuries that they have at wide receiver. Seattle's really going to be working on this passing game, and we know Smith and Jigba is the number one target there, but we'll see if he can get more touchdowns than McBride. And then the Rams, obviously, with the Stafford situation, I think the next guy that you think about that you go, okay, that's the guy that would lead the division in touchdowns is Puka Nacua, right? I think that's the one. George Kittle's probably on that list too. But considering the amount that this offense and this passing game revolves around Trey McBride, who's really still right now their best receiving weapon and a guy they just paid elite money for a tight end, I think it makes sense at 12-1. It's a solid dark horse bet.
Yeah, I like it. We'll talk about the Niners here in a second, but before we get to that, got to talk to all the parents out there. Ask them a question of what does your child's future success look like for you? Is it them getting to own their own home? Is it them traveling the world? Is it them owning their own business, operating their own business? Whatever that is, you can help them achieve that right now with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Your kids can't invest while they're minors, but this specific kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf right now and gives their investments more time to grow. Whole thing is online. Setting up an account could take you as little as just 5 minutes. And then you just manage your child's account and monitor those investments right from your phone. Funds can be used for nearly anything. When they're younger, could be music classes, tuition, sporting events, things like that. And then when they are older, maybe you are helping them buy that first car, buy that first house, start their business, whatever that looks like. Starts just $20, no contribution limits to it, tax advantages, funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. There's no commission fees to it, just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, MEET, fabric.com/PFFNFL. The portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. So the San Francisco 49ers, we have their projected win total right at 10.0. Now that obviously would be a big jump from last year. Finished last year 6-11. They were last in the NFC West, but they went through a lot of injuries last year. A lot of their best players ended up missing a good chunk of the season. We talked about how bad their run defense grade was, and we feel like that's going to be better this year. You're hoping you're getting Christian McCaffrey back fully healthy. Brandon Ayuk's not going to be fully healthy at the very beginning of the season, but you're hoping you're getting him back. Brock Purdy is out there, and he is healthy, and he looked good in the small preseason action that we saw from him, so hopefully you're not worried too much about that. Overall offensive grade last year, even with the injuries that they had, still pretty good. An 82.3, that was 5th in the NFL, but that 2024 defensive grade of a 68.3, that was 16th. How different do we think it's going to be for the San Francisco 49ers this year? Do you think it was just a down, bad luck year when it came to injuries and things not going their way? What do you think about this team that still has a lot of star power names, right? I mean, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Kittle. Like there's a lot of star power names that this team has. Now they lost some, Dream Greenlaw not on this team, Talanoa Hufanga not on this team, but what do we think about the Niners?
Earlier in the offseason, I was buying the bounce back. I was like, okay, these guys are going to get healthy and they have a lot to work with, and Kyle Shanahan's going to work the magic, and they got to get better on defense. They're very young on defense all of a sudden, other than Bosa and Warner. But look, right now it feels like the injury bug's already biting them. I mean, have you seen this wide receiver situation lately, Trev? I mean, Brandon Ayuk does not have a clear timeline, and Kyle Shanahan said it could be until at least week 6. Jawan Jennings is hurt. Demarcus Robinson is suspended for the first 3 games of the year now. I mean, right now Ricky Pearsall is like the only healthy wide receiver that they have that I would feel comfortable putting on the field. Obviously, George Kittle's great.
I even like Russell Gage. Now Russell Gage is going to miss a little bit of time with a sprained MCL.
This team,
they just traded for Sky Moore. They just traded for Sky Moore because they need bodies.
This team's wide receiver room right now is just cursed. I mean, it really is. That's where we're at right now. And also, we have yet to see Christian McCaffrey. We haven't seen him in game action yet, right? Trent Williams is coming off injury. In theory, if all those guys are 100%, you got an elite offense. You do. The problem is you can't play the theory when you already have this many injuries, especially at wide receiver. And the second that, obviously McCaffrey was hurt all year last year, but when Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk went down last year, everything caved in, right? And the fact that on defense they couldn't control the pace of the game because they had the 5th worst run defense grade in the league, you start to wonder now if the bounce back can happen, because Brock Purdy really struggled in the second half of the year last year. If they don't have Trent Williams playing like Trent Williams, what happens up front on the offensive line, especially in pass protection? If Christian McCaffrey is not same old prime Christian McCaffrey that he used to be, what are we looking at on this offense? Because, I mean, they have some decent options behind him. Isaac Orendo just got back from practicing. He was hurt for a bit. You have Jordan James, who they just drafted out of Oregon. But I want to say that this offense, if it's healthy, is their best strength, because it is. But if you already have this many injuries, especially at wide receiver, right now I question, other than throwing the ball to George Kittle, I question how they're going to throw the ball come week 1. It's going to be a really tough task, and I think especially after they lost Ayuk last year, Brock Purdy's production went way, way down.
So to just, give some numbers to that, 65.5 passing grade from Brock Purdy from week 7 onward. That was tied for 27th in the NFL out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks. What's your confidence level in Brock Purdy? Because the conversation, I think, for the longest time with Purdy, especially when he was operating under that rookie contract, was, of course he looks good. He's in a Kyle Shanahan offense with a embarrassment of riches and star power to be able to throw the ball to. And I think as time went on, he was able to show, and I'm certainly somebody who was pretty skeptical of Brock Purdy initially, and now I just think, hey, does he have the strongest arm in the NFL? No. Is physically, is the margin for error lower for him than it is for a lot of starting NFL quarterbacks, maybe all the NFL starting quarterbacks? Yeah, I just don't think he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the world, but he plays the game extremely smart. He anticipates things unbelievably well. He's so great at touch passes, and he's very confident in Kyle Shanahan's offense. And all of those things are valuable and that would legitimately make him a good quarterback. Now, and we have seen a little bit of this before. Again, it's part of what has given me more faith in Brock Purdy. When guys have gone down, he has still been able to produce, or at least he looks good at doing it. How do you feel about him going into this year? Is this a quarterback that you feel good about with as limited of options on paper as the 49ers might have entering the season? How do you feel about Brock Purdy going into the beginning of this year?
I'm in between. I mean, if he has at least most of the pieces to work with, I think he's pretty solidly a top 15 quarterback. Some people would probably throw him even in the top 12, right? I mean, he's played like that for 3 years. We've seen what Brock Purdy can do. And let's be real, Trev. Through the first 6 weeks of last season, he was the highest graded quarterback in football. And I really like that he was using his legs more to pick up more first downs. He's athletic. He's instinctual. He's got a high football IQ. He's gutsy. He's going to do what it takes to win football games. But you do wonder when you see last year, like you mentioned, from week 7 onward, darn near outside the top 30 in passing grade, you go, is he the quarterback that can carry your team through moments like that? And obviously, if you have a slew of wide receiver injuries like that, I don't know if anybody can. But can he carry you through those moments? And that's the question eventually we may have when the Niners maybe get back on top again, where you go, can he win you a Super Bowl? It's almost the same. I think he's more talented. Obviously, he's more mobile. It's really the same question we used to ask about Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Where it's like, can you, in that A-plus, gotta-have-it spotlight moment, can you do that? Can you carry us? Let's say the first 6 weeks. Let's just say this year, by week 7, they'll have all these guys healthy. Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Christian McCaffrey will look good, all of that. Can you get us through these first 6 weeks without us going 1-5? Can we do that? Because last year at the end of the year, just an absolute mess, right? And Purdy was a part of that. Purdy did struggle through that. Obviously, didn't have McCaffrey, Williams. I mean, these are huge superstar-level names we're talking about. But can you get us through that? Even if the first 6 weeks means going 3-3, can you get us through it? Instead of, okay, we're already caving in week 7 and we're looking at selling off at the trade deadline or something like that, right? I think there are still questions about that. I do. He's solid. There's no question he's solid. He's probably a top 15 quarterback in the league. I get why they paid him, because when you have a guy, you might as well pay him, because what's your alternative? But I think he needs to show us early in the year that they can really work through some adversity and he can lead them through that.
Their first 6 games this season, on the road against Seattle.
Tough.
On the road in New Orleans.
Okay.
Versus Arizona.
Tough.
Versus Jacksonville.
Okay.
At Los Angeles for the Rams.
Rough.
On Thursday Night Football. And then at Tampa Bay.
Oof.
That's the first 6 games.
And there's a lot of teams in that list. There's at least 4 of those teams you just mentioned that like to run the football. And that was the other issue for this Niners team last year, too.
Right. And I do want to get into that in a second. Second half of the season, they do play. I will say that if you tell me that this team's going to get fully healthy, even if they are 2-4 through the first 6 weeks of the season, if you tell me that they're going to be fully healthy from week 7 on, they play, this isn't in order, I'm just shouting it out here. They play the Giants, they play the Panthers, they play the Browns, they play the Titans, they play the Colts. And I think Chicago is going to be a lot better this year, but, let's see it. Obviously, it's to the end of the year, week 17. But all that to say, they actually have about 4 opponents where you go, okay, you should be better than that team this year. So they absolutely can make up for it, especially because if this team's in the hunt, their bye week is week 14. They've got one of the latest bye weeks of any team in the NFL. So they could have that opportunity to get pretty healthy. And then coming off the bye week, it's Tennessee and then Indianapolis. Actually, for the surrounding the bye week, you get to host Carolina on Monday Night Football. Then it's at Cleveland, bye week versus Tennessee, and then at Indianapolis. That's a pretty good like get right stretch of 5 weeks. I don't mean to disrespect the Carolina Panthers because I think they're better than those other three teams that I'm listing, but Carolina I think is still going to be a team that it's sort of wait and see for me with them on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that this team is 1 year away from really being a good competitor every single week, no matter who they're going up against.
No,
but,
the big.
I think that the Niners will have a chance there in that 5 week.
The big ray of hope that everybody points to, and my answer to that anytime this gets mentioned to me, the big ray of hope is that the Niners by the numbers have the easiest schedule in football. The only thing I counter with is having the easiest schedule in football only matters if you're good. Right? So, like,
sure.
You have to be healthy enough to go out there and actually win all those games that in the preseason that you can that you're supposed to go out there and win, right? You name all, right? You're right. Instinctually, a lot of those teams, okay, the Titans and the Panthers and Giants, and I think the Giants are going to be better as well. That defense I think it's going to be a problem, right? Who knows what Tennessee looks like with Cam Ward? The Colts, I know they're playing Daniel Jones, but they have a decent football team. Like, it only matters if you're good. I can sit here and pick apart and go, wow, they should really go 13-4. Look at their schedule. You got to go out there yourself and play football games. And this is a team that finished, what did the Niners win, 6 games last year?
6. Yeah.
I mean, it's injuries, and it's injuries already racking early, and it's a tough division. All 6 games in their division are not gimmies either. Mm-hmm. I always want to throw the cold water. I throw cold water on a lot of things, obviously, but I always want to throw it on, they have the easiest schedule. I go, yeah, but they have their own problems. Like, that doesn't just guarantee you're going to win all those games either.
Winnable games are only winnable if you win them. Dalton Wasserman, PFF NFL show. Make the banner.
It's reasonable.
Put it next to the every player, every game, every snap thing that we have on the wall there in the PFF studios. We do have to talk about their defensive line a little bit here. They have Nick Bosa, but then outside of Nick Bosa, you're really hoping that you're getting a lot out of some young guys. Now, they went and they got Bryce Huff, so they're hoping can be a better pass rusher for them. Defensive interior, it's Jordan Elliott, it's Kevin Givens, and then it's the young guys, right? Then it's Mykel Williams, it's Alfred Collins, it's CJ West. I like all 3 of those players. Specifically, I think all 3 of them can defend the run. They were some of the best run defenders in college football last year. So I think it's a baseline that helps them. But you are leaning on a lot of inexperience. You're leaning on a lot of rookies, and in the trenches, that's tough. So what do you think about this defensive line?
I think that's exactly it. It's extremely young, and you're relying on them to get better. The problem is you're relying on especially those rookies, right, Williams and Collins and West, to be better in run to improve them in run defense right this minute. And we know outside of a handful of guys, like none of them are going to be, we don't think, as good as Jared Verse right away, right? It's going to take some time. And I think what we've even seen in this preseason, Mykel Williams is yet to play because he's got an injury. And then what we've seen a little bit out of Alfred Collins and CJ West in their first 2 games going against starting offensive lines in Denver and Vegas, they've struggled. And rightfully so. They're rookies who were taken in the 2nd and 4th round, right? So, it's going to take some time. These guys, yes, they're all good run defenders. They're proven they've been good run defenders at the college level. And we even know Mykel Williams needs some more development to go. But you're relying on them early, and maybe all 3 of them, and then they've got other veteran guys, Kevin Givens, Jordan Elliott, even Bryce Huff struggled last year, and he's not going to help your run defense. This I would be worried about, especially this defensive line, aside from Nick Bosa, and if something again were to happen, because Nick Bosa missed a couple of games last year too. Something happens to Nick Bosa, I'm calling this maybe right now like maybe the worst defensive line in the league if something happens to him, right? I think the same idea, like we talk about, like what are the Bengals going to look like without Trey Hendrickson? If that's a thing, the Niners have the same problem. If something happens to Bosa, I've got nothing proven up front that's going to help me out, especially in run defense. So it is a concern for me because I think there are certain matchups. Seattle wants to run the ball. Arizona wants to run the ball. The Rams, all these other teams we talk about, again, mentioning in the NFC, they want to line up and run the football. And if you want to be one of the contenders, you got to be loading up to stop the run. And this Niners D-line is the biggest concern for me doing that.
So the season-long bet that Ben likes here for this team is an interesting one. Christian McCaffrey over 425.5 receiving yards. And it's minus money. It's minus 110. It's over at DraftKings. But he says there isn't a shortage of question marks in the receiving core for San Francisco, with Deebo Samuel traded, Brandon Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings dealing with injury. Meanwhile, news on McCaffrey's health has been positive. It's reasonable to expect him to pick up some of the receiving slack if he can stay healthy this season. Now, the only seasons in Christian McCaffrey's entire career where he has not hit 425 and a half receiving yards are the 3 seasons in which he did not play more than 7 games. And every single season that he has played more than 7 games, he has hit this number. And in fact, of those seasons that I just listed that are not the ones that he missed time, the lowest receiving total he's ever had was 2 years ago when he had 564. So he very clearly clears this. You might be able to alt line this up a little bit if you wanted to, if you could find a spot that'll let you. And I don't know if DraftKings will let you change the season long bets here in that way, but you should feel pretty confident. Now, there's a reason why this is minus money, but like I said, like you should feel decently confident about this if you think Christian McCaffrey is going to be fully healthy this season. And that is obviously the big if. But if you think that's going to happen, the numbers in the history would tell you that he's going to hit it because he has just used that much in the receiving game. And like I said, any time that he has played more than 7 games in a single season, he has hit this mark and he has hit it comfortably. The closest that he has gotten to that is over 100 yards above 425 and a half. Let's go to the Seattle Seahawks here. Mike Macdonald, in his second year of coaching this team, went 10-7 last year, second in the AFC West. We have their projected win total a little bit less. We have it at 8 for this upcoming season. When you look at their offensive grade, 76.8, but it's hard to really look at that offensive grade and go, oh, okay, yeah, let's build off of that from last year because, yeah, they don't have Geno Smith. It's a totally new offensive coordinator. Sam Darnold's now the quarterback. Things are just going to look a lot different, but we'll talk about that more in a second. On the defensive side of the football, 69.8. That was 14th in the NFL. Your thoughts here with the Seattle Seahawks? I'm pretty bullish on the Seahawks this season. I like Mike Macdonald as a head coach. I like Clint Kubiak as an offensive coordinator. I'm not ready to say like, oh, I think that Sam Darnold is this changed, incredible, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL quite yet. Kevin O'Connell has made it pretty good for, I think, every quarterback that he has worked with recently. And so I'm interested to see what it looks like in Seattle, but I do have a lot of faith in the guy who is calling plays there for them now, and Clint Kubiak, and what we saw from him last year when he was with the New Orleans Saints. Overall, it didn't go well for the Saints, but I thought on the offensive side of the ball, they did some things pretty well. And on defense, I think the young guys are playing well. I think the veterans are playing well. I think it's a really good defense that could be even better under a defensive-minded head coach. So I'm pretty bullish on the Seahawks. I like the number to be even a little bit higher than our projected win total, maybe by a win or two here with them getting 9 or 10 wins. What do you think about the Seahawks this year?
Yeah, there's some X factors when you talk about Darnold and the offensive line and Clint Kubiak, and I'm with you. It should not be, I know they lost Geno Smith and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, right, but I don't think it should be as doom and gloom in Seattle as some people thought earlier in the offseason. And I think Darnold, go back to free agency when we were talking about he had multiple options, right? When you talk about the Steelers, maybe going back to the Jets, the Giants, but I think he picked the right spot, and pairing with Clint Kubiak as his offensive coordinator, who was his quarterback's coach 2 years ago in San Francisco, I think it's a great move. I think it's a very similar offense to what Kevin O'Connell ran in Minnesota, and I think even you're seeing some early returns in the preseason with the way this run game and the offensive line that we have so many questions about. I think things are going to be simplified with these outside zone schemes, right? I like the way that Anthony Bradford looks at guard. I love the way that Gray Zabel looks at left guard so far in the preseason. I think he's going to be obviously really good for him. He was a first-round pick that they believed in. So I think when you look at what the optimism level should be, externally, people might go, well, they lost all their pieces. What are they going to do? And I'm going to say, well, they've got an offense that kind of fits the players they have. They're a little thin at receiver, I'll admit that, but you could do worse than, say, Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and some of the young guys they brought in. So I think this team's going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to play defense. I think it's getting built more and more in Mike Macdonald's image. I do think his defense is going to be really solid. They got a really good secondary. Leonard Williams up front leading the charge up there. We'll see what a healthy DeMarcus Lawrence gives them, but I think they're going to play a certain style of football. I think it might take time early in the season for the offense to click, especially the interior of the offensive line. But I've got faith that they can coach this team up to get up to be a solid unit by the end of the season. And maybe, just maybe, the ceiling is a wild card scenario, a wild card finish there.
I think that is well within the realm of possibility. I really do, especially because I know I'm a draft guy who's having some faith here in some of these rookies this year. But if you look at the 3 veterans that you mentioned, MVS, Cooper Kupp, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think a lot of people like Jackson Smith-Njigba just anyways. Like, they think he's a really talented receiver. They think he's taking the next step this year. They think he's really going to ascend. I would agree. I think he's very talented in that regard. Is Cooper Kupp the 2,000-yard receiver that he was in the past? No, but I still think he's a damn good option for them. I think he'll be very reliable. And then MVS, for as much as people might go, yeah, MVS is a throwaway. MVS was clearly very productive in the way that they wanted him to be productive last year when he got signed to the Saints with Clint Kubiak. He is going to be their explosive weapon. He is going to be their deep downfield threat. And then on top of that, you have Torrey Horton, who I think was an underrated wide receiver in last year's draft. Hawks wide receiver core is better than people who are just looking at the names on paper are giving it credit for. I think it's going to be a good unit, especially when you rope in the talent that they have at running back as well. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Damian Martinez. I think that the running game is going to be really strong for this team as well. I think they're going to be very balanced. I like that they're leaning into their identity already for what their offensive coordinator Kubiak wants to run with a lot of outside zone stuff. Clearly, I think they believe that they've got at least 3 of the 5 offensive linemen who can operate that really, really well. You still have the secondary, though, as the best strength for this team. Secondary of Reek Woolen, Devon Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, Julian Love. Now we're adding Nicky Manwari to the mix. They've got Shaq Griffin as well. Josh Jobe is one of their other outside starting corners. And I think this is an aggressive, fast, just athletic overall secondary that they have here. So you seem to be pretty bullish on this unit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think their ability to cover, especially outside at corner, and I think Devon Witherspoon's an absolute superstar. To me, he's the guy that makes all of this go. His ability to play on the outside in a base defense with him and Woolen as the 2 corners, his ability in nickel to go in and play the slot and even, just be that third run defender with the level of aggression that he plays with. I think you've got 2 really fun Swiss Army knives in Witherspoon and now Nicky Manwari coming in, right? With Julian Love as the free safety, Manwari can play around down in the box, right? He can also serve as that extra linebacker in run defense. We know he can play down closer to the line of scrimmage, and he's a freak athlete, right? I think the more that they can avoid having him as a deep center fielder, that's better, but they have Julian Love for that. I just think it's a really both talented and versatile secondary with a lot of different pieces that can go in different places that they're going to be solid back there. I'm telling you right now, I think at linebacker, they're okay with Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, but the fact that they have all these talented players behind them makes their lives a lot easier. I like this secondary a lot. It's one of the more underrated units of football.
I like their secondary, especially when we pair it with the front that they have. Leonard Williams was amazing last year. I mean, he had a career year in a lot of different categories and PFF grades that we had for him. They're bringing in DeMarcus Lawrence. I think Byron Murphy II is going to take that next step this year, and he's going to be even better and even more impactful. Jerron Reed, they've got Riley Mills as well, Derek Hall, Mike Morris. They have Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu as well. I really like this front for this team. I think they're going to be even. I think they're really stout in the positions where they're going to have guys with their hands in the dirt, whether it's in odd front stuff or even front stuff. I think they've got the personnel to be able to run whatever they want. I think a lot of defenses and defensive coordinators just go it's this time of year, a lot of beat reporters go, "Oh, do you think you're going to be more of an odd or an even front this year?" And they go, "Oh, we're just going to stay multiple. We're just going to stay multiple as a team. We're going to be as versatile as possible." And a lot of coaches love to say that. Sometimes you don't have the players to be able to say that, because when you're in an even front, a lot of times it's a lot of one-gapping responsibilities. A lot of times you can get more aggressive. When you're odd front stuff and you have less guys with their hand in the dirt, a lot of times you got to be asking them to two-gap, and sometimes you just don't have the players with the strength, the size, or the length to be able to actually do all of those things. I actually think that Seattle does. I think that Seattle has one of the more versatile defensive lines in the NFL to run whatever Mike Macdonald wants them to run up front, to make it advantageous for them, the secondary, to get as aggressive as they want with all of those athletes that they have there. So to me, when I look at this defense, are there other star-studded defenses around the NFL who, okay, maybe you take their star power here or there? Yeah, of course. But I think as a cohesive unit, I actually really love the picture that is painted of what this unit can be together in Seattle. And again, that's why I feel like I am higher on the Seahawks this year than most people, because when you look at it on paper, you go, yeah, okay, it'll be a solid team. But I can actually look at the coordinators and the defensive schemes and what I think they're going to want to do. And I think that it lines up really well with the players that they actually have. So I'm pretty bullish on this Seahawks team. I think they're going to be pretty good, and I think that marriage of the defensive line and the secondary is going to be a reason why on that side of the ball.
No, I absolutely agree. I think it is a team. I think when you look at this defense, You like it because you don't see like one gaping hole, right? Like, this is how we attack this defense. The one thing I might question is they just don't have one of those primetime pass rushers, right? Williams is really good inside. Boye Mafe is solid. Maybe the healthy DeMarcus Lawrence helps that out. They don't have one of those elite pass rushers, but I think Mike McDonald does a really good job of creating pressure anyway and getting around that. Maybe that's something we'll talk about next offseason of like, hey, they need one of those pass rushers. Maybe it's Trey Hendrickson. Maybe it's Micah Parsons. Maybe whoever it is down the line eventually, but I think that's the only thing missing from that defense. I think they're really a solid unit all the way around. And going back to the offensive side really quick, I think you mentioned a really good point with the depth at some positions they have too. You know, we've mentioned on the defensive side the depth on the D-line, the depth at corner, but a couple of things I want to talk about too offensively. The depth that they have at running back, when you talk about Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, George Holani, Damian Martinez, I feel really good about 4 guys right there at running back that are good football players. And I think this team also at tight end, you mentioned Elijah Arroyo. I think they got 2 really good tight ends. Think about this. They felt good enough about these 2 guys, Elijah Arroyo and A.J. Barner at tight end, that they let Noah Fant go. They cut him, and he's in Cincinnati now. I think Arroyo and Barner, in the 12 personnel that Clint Kubiak's going to run a lot of, I think they complement each other really well. A.J. Barner's a hell of a blocker. Elijah Arroyo's a freak athlete who led all of college football tight ends in yards per reception last year. He's a big playmaker. I think these 2 guys are going to feature really, really highly in this offense. Everybody's worried about, okay, what's the wide receiver situation around Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I think these 2 tight ends play a huge role in this offense. They're going to be in 12 personnel a lot. Sam Darnold's comfortable under center and in those situations. And I won't be shocked at all if Elijah Arroyo makes a lot of explosive plays for this team this season.
It's just a team that you feel like you could see it coming together very well. I think really no matter what unit you look at, again, does it have the star power over the teams? No, but I really do think that this could be a really good cohesive unit, and the Seahawks can win double-digit games this season. The season-long bet that Ben Lindsay has that he likes the most. Kenneth Walker, most rushing yards in the NFC West, plus 600 over at DraftKings. This is very interesting. So this is what Ben says about it. With Clint Kubiak coming over as offensive coordinator, there should be an added emphasis onto the run game in 2025. It was only preseason, but Seattle ran for over 250 yards in their second preseason game. Walker should lead the backfield coming off a 2024 season where he ranked 3rd among running backs in PFF rushing grade. I like betting on the upside here with his talent in what should be a more stable environment at plus 600. Now, Walker had really good PFF grades. I think a lot of people that don't have PFF Plus subscriptions, first of all, what are you doing? But they won't see those good PFF grades and those efficiency numbers that he had. And you'd instead, if you look at just the common stats for Kenneth Walker, this past season in 2024, you'd be pretty discouraged because he only plays in 11 games. And okay, you understand that. But he only rushed for 573 yards as well. That was much less than the 905 he rushed for the year before, and certainly less than the 1,050 that he rushed the year before that. When you look at his yards per carry average, it has gone down each of the last 3 seasons, but I think that certainly when you look at the PFF grades, there's context to that. Like, that's not all on him. And so you figure with the offensive line playing better and with this offensive scheme, in my opinion, built towards what Kenneth Walker wants to do. I remember when I was scouting Kenneth Walker when he was coming out of Wake Forest and Michigan State. Wait, which one was he at first? Now I can't remember.
Wake Forest first.
Which one was he at last? He was at Wake Forest last?
No, he was drafted out of Michigan State.
He was drafted out of Michigan State. Okay, sorry. I watched a lot of games for both of them. I couldn't remember. What he liked to do the most is bounce the ball to the outside. And I even remember writing in his scouting report that a potential negative of Kenneth Walker is if he does not go to an offense that likes to run mid and outside zone, you might have a bounce happy type of a player who just is not as much of a athletic alpha at the pro level that he was in the college level. Now he's still a really athletic player, but there's just not a lot of guys when you get to the pro level who can bounce it to the outside when the running plan and the run game design is not designed for you to do that, and you could just out athlete everybody at the sideline. That doesn't often happen. When you have an offense that leans towards you being able to do that, now you got blockers to the outside. Now you got lead blockers running in front of you. To me, this lines up perfectly well to what Kenneth Walker wanted to do a lot, certainly naturally when he was at Wake Forest and when he was at Michigan State. And I think it's something that he still wants to do a lot of in the NFL, and he's going to get his chance to do it. So I'm not saying that it's guaranteed, certainly, to be a career year for Kenneth Walker, But if you tell me that he plays 15, 16, 17 games this season, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we're talking about over 1,000 yards rushing and potentially double-digit touchdowns for Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, no, I think the big question on this bet, there's really two of them. One is health. You got to play all 17 games. And the only other thing I'd throw out there is, again, the depth of this running back room, especially Zach Charbonnet always looming behind him. He's going to get touches, and I think he's going to look pretty good in this offense too. So that's really the one question. And especially, I mean, there's some darn good backs in this division that get a lot of carries, right? Kyron Williams gets a ton of work for the Rams. Christian McCaffrey, if he's healthy, is going to get a ton of work. You've got James Conner is a workhorse for the Cardinals, right? So I think it is a solid bet considering the metrics. It's a dark horse bet considering the grading and the potential improvement on this offensive line. And look, there were even games last year when Seattle just chose not to run the football, right? We kind of questioned their offensive decision making. I remember, what was it, the loss to the Giants? Didn't they run the ball like 7 times the whole game? Or something like there were games when they went out there, and I get it. The offensive line was a mess. They had the injuries, all that stuff. There were games they went out there and just chose not to run the football. That's not going to be the case with
specifically Ryan Grubb went out there and chose to not run the football.
I mean, he's calling the plays, obviously. Yeah, right. I mean, we'll see how that holds at Alabama this year, but he's back with this guy, Kalen DeBoer. Feel good about that. Check out our playoff prediction episode on the College Show today. But, I think when you look at this offense and what they want to be, Sam Darnold, you want to run the ball, play action, 5th best play action passing grade in the NFL, deep passing grade. He was one of the best in the NFL last year. Those are the 3 things Clint Kubiak wants to do. It matches up with Sam Darnold. It matches up with the hopeful improvement of this offensive line, and it matches up with the production of Kenneth Walker and all of these backs that are going to get carries in this offense.
Make sure that you guys have a PFF Plus subscription so you can see all of those numbers for yourself. You can even know them before we are going to say them here on this show. Check it out, subscribe.pff.com. Also, if you are interested in a lot of the season-long bets that we were talking about here on the show, we get a lot more data that turns into betting analysis for you on the PFF app. So make sure you download the PFF app as well. There's the specific player prop tool that's going to be a lot of fun to use throughout the season. It's going to be combining our PFF data and looking at a lot of different lines at a lot of the different sports books, so we can tell you exactly where we think the value is for a lot of bets every single week. So make sure you guys go sign up for a PFF Plus subscription and download the PFF app. That's it for us today, as we have previewed every single team here in the NFC West. We got 2 more divisions, right? Just 2 more. We better only have 2 more because there's only 1 week until the NFL season's coming around. So I think we got 2 more coming for you next week. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the PFF NFL channel. We've got those previews coming for you, but we've also got a lot of really great one-off videos. I'm so excited about our in-season schedule that we have. The preview shows, the review shows, a lot of the film breakdowns, a lot of great stuff. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us today and throughout this upcoming NFL season. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema, saying thank you so much for watching the PFF NFL show. See you guys next week.